Welcome to this explainer. If you've ever just paused and looked at the bustling world around you, the food on your table, the smartphone you're probably holding, or even just the roads you drive on and wondered, what is the invisible force keeping all this moving? Well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're zeroing in on the true engine driving our entire economy, the firm, the producer. Without them, honestly, the wheels of society would just grind to a halt. We're going to break down exactly why they're so absolutely crucial, using some really clear concepts straight from our source material.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our agenda for today. First, the economic engine. Then, supplying goods, utilizing resources, driving employment, boosting exports, and finally, the global producer.
Starting off with Section 1, the economic engine.
Before we can really appreciate what producers do, we need a rock-solid understanding of what they actually are, right? Our source provides a super clear definition here. A firm or a producer is a particular unit producing a commodity or service with a view to earn profit. Now, the key takeaway here isn't just outward profit, it's the action of producing. They are the ultimate organizers. They combine raw materials, labor, capital, and transform those separate raw elements into something genuinely valuable.
And firms aren't just those faceless massive corporations and glass towers. Producers actually span literally every sector of our daily lives. Notice the diverse categories we have here. We've got primary producers. Think of a farmer cultivating a giant field of cotton. Then secondary producers step in, right? Like a weaver at a loom or a tailor transforming that raw cotton into the finished shirt you're wearing. And finally, tertiary producers provide those vital services, moving and selling that shirt. That's the massive infrastructure of the railways or just your local retail shop. The point is, every single one of these is a firm. Every single one is a producer.
So, why does this massive interconnected web of producers actually matter? Well, according to the text, it's simple. Without producers, there is no production. Period. End of story. We can categorize their immense importance into four main pillars: the supply of goods and services, the efficient utilization of resources, the expansion of income and employment opportunities, and the increase in export earnings. Let's break these down one by one to really see their real-world impact.
Moving on to Section 2, Supplying Goods and Services.
Supplying goods is probably the most visible impact producers have on our everyday lives. So, the crucial point here is essentially a simple equation. Producers are the absolute sole source of supply for the various kinds of goods and services in any economy. Because of that, an increase in the number of producers directly translates to an increase in the supply of those goods and services. It makes sense, right? If an economy wants to grow, if we want more healthcare, more food, better tech, faster transport, it fundamentally requires an increase in the number and the capacity of its producers. They are literally the valve that controls the flow of everything we consume.
Which brings us to Section 3, Efficient Resource Utilization.
But we have to ask, where those goods actually come from? We've got to shift our focus down to the raw materials. Look, every economy on Earth has economic resources at its disposal: land, water, minerals, you name it. But, as we all know, a forest of trees doesn't just spontaneously turn into a dining room table, and a field of cotton doesn't just magically knit itself into a sweater. Producers are the catalyst. Through their productive activities, they step in and make the use of these resources efficient. They figure out exactly how to take a raw, completely untapped resource and systematically convert it into something that actually satisfies human wants. Without the firms, those resources just sit there, totally unutilized and inefficient.
Let's turn to Section 4, Driving Income and Employment.
Now, this touches on the deeply personal, human impact producers have on society. It's a pretty fundamental question, isn't it? When we talk about reducing unemployment, or, say, boosting the middle class, where do those jobs and income opportunities actually come from? Because they certainly don't just appear out of thin air.
Let's move through this and see how it builds logically. Step 1. When producers succeed, what do? They look to expand the scale of their production. And to do that, they naturally need more hands and more minds. Step 2. This expansion directly increases income opportunities across the economy. They are essentially purchasing factor services, which is an economics term for labor, straight from households. And then Step 3. As a result of all this, a massive number of people become employed in the production sector. The firm is quite literally the generator of the paycheck. When the producing sector grows, employment grows right alongside it. It's a direct link.
Next up, Section 5, Boosting Export Earnings.
So now let's zoom out to the macroeconomic scale.
A firm doesn't just serve its local neighborhood or even its own country, a lot of them produce goods specifically for the global market. Our source text points out that the export earnings of a country depend entirely upon the number of producers who are actively engaged in the production of exportable items. Think about it. If a nation wants to increase the total volume of its exports, bringing foreign currency and global wealth into the domestic economy, it does so by encouraging its producers to create goods for export. A nation's financial standing on the world stage? Yeah, that is carried directly on the shoulders of its domestic firms.
And that leads us to our final part, Section 6, the global producer.
So we've seen how firms are the absolute foundation of supply, the ultimate optimizers of resources, the creators of jobs, and the primary drivers of global trade. Which honestly forces us to ask one absolutely crucial question to wrap up this explainer. If producers are the essential engine of supply, resources, employment, and exports, what happens to an economy when that engine stalls? Just think about that. If firms stop expanding, the supply of goods shrinks, resources go to waste, jobs disappear, and global trade just dries up. Understanding the critical importance of firms isn't just some dry academic exercise. It's literally the key to understanding the health, the wealth, and the future of our entire society. Definitely keep that in mind the next time you interact with any producer today, from your local baker all the way to the largest railway. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.